you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering woke Disney surrenders, pays millions to Spider-Man co-creator Steve Ditko. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. Coming from Deadline, Disney vs. Ditco ends with settlement over Spider-Man and other Marvel hero rights. From the New York Times, Marvel settles with family of comics artist Jack Kirby. It was the same lawyer that got the deal for the Jack Kirby family that got the deal for Steve Ditko's family. After more than 2 years, Disney and subsidiary Marvel have reached a settlement with the estate of acclaimed comic book artist Steve Ditko. Lawyers for Disney and Steve Ditko's estate filed court papers on December 6th that effectively ended the pricey dispute. A final affirmation of the settlement is expected in the coming weeks. Represented by pugilistic copyright attorney Mark Toberoff. Pugilistic, what does that mean? Pugilistic, inclined or eager to fight, aggressively hostile, belligerent. And here is their anti-woke example of a pugilistic or belligerent person. She was fired for being a pugilistic, wine-tossing diva who fought with nearly everyone. Had to read that one because it is not a woke definition. Don't see much of those anymore. Attorney Mark Toberoff, the Ditko estate attorney in 2021, had sought termination notices on the rights to such luminaries as Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and Iron Man. Other artists' families and heirs also challenged the rights to characters created by their family members. Those disputes were resolved earlier this year. As in previous settlements and resolutions that Disney Marvel have reached with the likes of the Jack Kirby estate and others, the settlement with the Ditko estate is confidential. However, attorney Toberoff told Deadline that the parties reached an amicable resolution of this interesting case. You can read between the lines. It's millions. The blockbuster home of Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Iron Man, and many more Avengers and costume crusaders is fighting back against termination notices on many of its biggest heroes. Quote, any contributions Steve Ditko made to the works were done at Marvel's expense because Marvel paid Steve Ditko a per-page rate for his contributions. Steve Ditko made those contributions to the works with the expectation that Marvel would pay him, and Steve Ditko did not obtain any ownership interest in or to his contributions, said Marvel's heavy hitter outside counsel, Daniel Petrocelli, to the estate of the famed Spider-Man artist in one of 5 complaints for declaratory relief filed in federal court in California and New York. In the past several months, Marvel has received termination notices sent to the U.S. Copyright Office from the estates and heirs to legends like Steve Ditko, Stan Lee, Don Rico, Don Heck, Gene Colan, and the still-living Larry Lieber, Stan Lee's brother, addressing cutting loose for Marvel all pre-January 1st, 1978 exclusive or non-exclusive grants of the transfer or license of the renewal copyrights. The terminations would be effective ranging from May 29th to July 17, 2023, according to Marvel filings. The Copyright Act of 1976 allows heirs to pull the plug on licenses granted or transferred for a copyright work in particular situations with a fully executed notice, as the heirs and estates have tried to do here. It's important to note Marvel will not lose ownership of the lucrative characters if they came up short in court. The Disney-owned superhero giant would retain a co-ownership that would involve payouts to the other co-owners, among other requirements. Along with the profit sharing, regardless of what happens in the federal courts, these rights only apply in the United States and not elsewhere. So in that context, a declaration is necessary and appropriate at this time in light of the purported effective termination dates and the ongoing exploitation of the works and the development of new works derivative of the works, said Marvel's complaint, asking the courts to step in against the moves orchestrated to some degree by lawyer Mark Toberoff. If this and attorneys Petrocelli and Toberoff sound familiar, that's because the two lawyers faced off over the rights to Superman just a few years ago. In terms of the Marvel-specific copyright fight, the heirs of the legendary Jack Kirby went to the mat with the company over the rights to Captain America, the Fantastic Four, the Hulk, Iron Man, Thor, the original X-Men, and a plethora of other characters. As with now, Marvel's point of view was that Kirby was under a work-for-hire deal and held no tangible claim. The Superman dispute was settled in January 2014 as Mulvaney and Myers Petrocelli won Warner Brothers' yet another court battle and the potential threat to billions being lost by DC Comics owner Warner Brothers. In the Kirby case, Marvel and the Toberoff represented heirs came to a meeting of the minds. In September 2014, just before the Kirby case was going in front of the Supreme Court, Marvel settled with the Kirby heirs. Among the portions of that resolution, Kirby's name is now among the credits in MCU films and TV series featuring characters he created or co-created. So going into round 2, both Petrocelli and Toberoff have their own definitions of what this is all about and where it's going. Since these were works made for hire and thus owned by Marvel, we filed these lawsuits to confirm that the termination notices are invalid and of no legal effect, Petrocelli told Deadline. Mark Toberoff had a bit more to say. I represent Larry Lieber, who worked on Thor, Iron Man, and Ant-Man, the estates of Steve Ditko for Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, Don Heck for Iron Man, Black Widow, and Hawkeye, Don Rico, who did Black Widow, and Gene Colan, who did Captain Marvel, Falcon, and Blade. In 2010 to 2014, I successfully represented the family of Jack Kirby, the co-creator of Marvel's most famous superheroes, in a case where Marvel similarly sued Kirby's family for exercising their rights under the Copyright Act. Here, Marvel has done the same, but make no mistake, artist-friendly Disney is calling the shots. At the core of these cases is an anachronistic and highly criticized interpretation of work made for hire under the 1909 Copyright Act. We had tremendous support from the artistic community, the former Register of Copyrights, the former Trademark Commissioner, and all the guilds, PEN America, and 237 artists, including a dozen Pulitzer winners. The Kirby case went all the way to the Supreme Court, which showed keen interest, at which point Disney settled. At the time, I was asked whether I regretted not writing the legal injustice to creators, which I indeed did. I responded that there would be other such cases, and now here we are. Either way, a series of federal judges will be making the next call, Avengers Assemble or otherwise. Mark Toberoff is really making a difference for these classic creators. Also from Deadline, when Steve Ditko passed away, they did a little summary on his life. Let's check it out. Steve Ditko dies. Comic artist who created Spider-Man and Doctor Strange with Stan Lee was 90. Steve Ditko, a comic book artist who co-created the Marvel characters Spider-Man and Doctor Strange with Stan Lee, has died in New York. He was 90. Ditko studied art at the Cartoonist and Illustrators School under early Batman artist Jerry Robinson. His first 2 published comics, Fantastic Fears 5 and Black Magic 27, were drawn in 1953. The iconic Spider-Man character first appeared in 1962 in issue 15 of Amazing Fantasy. During that span, Ditko also worked for Charlton Comics, where he had full autonomy over his creations. In 1955, he met Stan Lee, then an editor at Atlas Comics, which was run by Lee's uncle Martin Goodman. The company, which began as Timely, would later morph into Marvel Comics. Ditko started working for Marvel and would continue to do so for the next 20 years, while also drawing for Charlton. For Charlton, he created Captain Atom in the 1960s Space Adventures number 33. Spider-Man's arrival 2 years later, followed by the 1963 debut of Doctor Strange, would help launch the so-called Marvel Age of Comics. Ditko would go on to draw such characters as Blue Beetle and The Question, both from 1967 to 1968. Ditko would follow Charlton editor Dick Giordano to DC Comics in 1968, where he and writer Steve Skeets created the Hawk and Dove, who first appeared in Showcase number 75. Ditko left DC in 1969 and would work exclusively for Charlton and other small indie publishers into the mid-1970s. He then returned to DC and created the short-lived series Shade the Changing Man. The character was later revived for DC's Vertigo without Ditko. He returned to Marvel in 1979 amid the comic book movie boom created by the previous year's Superman starring Christopher Reeve. There, he took over Jack Kirby's Machine Man series. Ditko would freelance for DC and Marvel until his 1998 retirement from mainstream comics. It's great to see the creators and co-creators of classic characters finally get recognized and get paid. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.